Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I want to close tonight's conversation about military spending, about what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on Canada, the United States, effectively with a couple of questions. And my bottom line question is, where is the Winston Churchill of today? Because we need a Winston Churchill of today. I used to work for Jim Pattison, a very successful, incredibly good entrepreneur. And he used to have this line that he would repeat, and I'm paraphrasing here, so it's not an exact quote, but it was something along the lines of, Brian, you can always buy a company, or anyone can buy a company, if you don't care how much you pay. Fareed Zakaria had a show about Trump's strategy to ending the war in Ukraine. And he said it's easy to end a war if you just surrender, suggesting that effectively what Trump was doing was giving in to all of Putin's demands. In a negotiation, it's got to be a win-win or a lose-lose. It can't be a win-lose. It can't be a situation where someone gets it all. Otherwise, you're just being walked over. I think that the historical analogies are very helpful here. I think that the old line about history may not repeat, but it rhymes is very apt. And people that have been comparing Putin to Hitler have been comparing the 1930s to the last 10 years. I think have got a lot of truth in what they're saying. And let's remind us of some of the facts. Hitler came to power. And I think there's also an analogy that we have to be concerned about in regards to how quickly he came to power, that he was elected democratically, but that within, I think it was something like less than 60 days, he got rid of the German constitution and effectively put in place a dictatorship or an authoritarian government is kind of chilling. And we have to be mindful of that. And that a lot of businesses, in fact, even businesses led by Jewish individuals, and I've seen annual reports and letters to the shareholders by some of those companies that were supportive of Hitler because they thought that he would do the right things for the economy, and thinking that some of his comments in Mein Kampf were trolling, exaggeration, just meant to stir up people and would never be carried through, were naive at best. And completely wrong and dumb at worst, and ended up creating a situation where too many people supported Hitler until it was too late. And I think we have to be very mindful of that. But what happened in the mid 1930s is that Nazi Germany took over Austria, and no one complained. No one in the international community complained. And then in 1938, threatened to take over Czechoslovakia, and Neville Chamberlain from the UK, from Britain, went to Munich in a very famous diplomatic encounter. And I guess there were other countries represented at the time, so that is one difference between now and then. And I understand that Czechoslovakia didn't have an army ready to defend themselves, and so that may have also been an argument about why that might be a little bit different than today. But Neville Chamberlain was worried about war and negotiated an agreement with Hitler that he got some of Czechoslovakia, not all, though very soon thereafter, Hitler broke the agreement and took all of Czechoslovakia, but that's a whole different story. And went back and said that something along the lines, this is peace in our times, and bragged about that negotiation. There was one lone voice, from my understanding, in the world that really stood up. At least one lone voice of influence and power, and that was Winston Churchill, who was actually part of the same political party that Neville Chamberlain was. And he said that this was one of the most catastrophic mistakes and would ultimately lead to war. Catastrophic mistakes in diplomacy. And effectively mirroring some of the things that I said that Jimmy Pattison said and that Fareed Zakaria said, that this was complete surrender, it was completely given in to the aggressor. I worry that 2014's annexation of Crimea is comparable to Austria in the 1930s. I worry that the attacks into eastern Ukraine in the last couple of years, and the full-scale invasion in the last couple of years, in 3 years ago, into Ukraine completely, is comparable to Czechoslovakia and the takeover of Czechoslovakia. And I really worry that that if we give Russia some of Ukraine, comparable to Czechoslovakia, in a couple of years, couple of months, it may be all of Ukraine. And I worry that Trump suing for peace, wanting to be called the peacemaker president, isn't, as too many Republicans are saying, finding peace through strength, but finding peace, suing for peace through incredible weakness, surrender, giving up, giving it all to the other party. And it makes no sense. I understand that millions of people have died, but from what I understand, more Russian soldiers have died than 2 times as many Russian soldiers have died in 3 years than Americans died in all of World War II. This is having a huge toll on the Russian military ability, the Russian economy, their ability to fight against NATO, against Western countries, probably the end of their ability to be a superpower. All those are good things, I would have thought. And this is being done at the loss of unbelievable amount of life and property and infrastructure in Ukraine. But so far, there haven't been American soldiers, Canadian soldiers, NATO soldiers actually put in harm's way. And maybe, frankly, there should be some, but there haven't been as of yet. So I understand the desire for peace, but to surrender completely, to say peace in our time, I think this is Neville Chamberlain all over again. Donald Trump, are you going to go down? Do you want to go down in history as being the second Neville Chamberlain? Is that how you want to go down in history? Is that your ambition, to give in to Putin? And how are you going to ensure that Putin stops at wherever you give him? That he's not going to take over the balance of Ukraine like Hitler took over the balance of Czechoslovakia, or that a year and a half later, he's not going to attack Poland like Hitler attacked Poland. What, a year and a bit after the Munich conference, and started a world war? We need a Winston Churchill. We need that individual that's going to stand up like the little boy did and called the emperor that had no clothes the emperor that had no clothes. I think whether it's the Prime Minister of the UK, the new Chancellor in Germany, the President of Poland, the new Prime Minister in Canada, maybe someone in the Republican Party in the United States, Nikki Haley, I don't know who it is, but the world is desperate today for someone that's willing to stand up for truth, to stand up for what's right, to defend Ukraine, defend Western values, defend the rule of law, defend the sovereignty of nations, to stand up to the bully in the United States that looks like he's actually giving in to the bully in Russia, who's willing to surrender and give it all, give up everything so he can call himself a peacemaker, who I don't think is making peace through strength, but is making peace through weakness, through surrendering, through giving it all up. I come back. Jimmy Pattison said to me over and over again, urging me to be tough in my negotiations for companies. Brian, anyone can buy any company if you don't care how much you pay. In other words, you can always overpay and get the company. He also said, if you want to know what you can get in a deal, you always have to walk away from the table once. I think Trump is just giving it all up. We need desperately Winston Churchill in our world today. Where is Winston Churchill that's going to stand up and say, this is the biggest travesty. This is the biggest mistake. This is the biggest diplomatic mistake ever made. And it's going to end up in war. And we should not be doing business with this man. Margaret Thatcher would have done it. Who is the individual today that's going to stand up to Donald Trump, stand up to the world and say, you can't surrender to Vladimir Putin? Where is Winston Churchill today in our geopolitical, political situation? Thanks. That's my show for tonight. Go out and vote. Good night.